Okay, let's talk about this real quick. So the chief of police of the Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where Dante Wright, a 20-year-old black man, was fatally shot by a white officer on Sunday, said on Monday that the shooting was an accident. The officer, Kimberly A. Potter, a 26-year-old veteran of the force, had intended to deploy her taser. The chief said at a news conference, but she had shot her pistol instead. Tasers look and feel different from pistols in a number of ways, and most police forces, including Brooklyn Centers, have standard precautions and protocols in place to prevent that sort of mix-up that can be deadly. So I'm just going to say right now, even just as somebody who messes with Nerf guns, I can tell a different type of Nerf gun in my hand merely by holding it. It doesn't take me long. Also, thank you very much for the follow. Slender sickness. There we go. That's what it was. But, you know, I can tell a different type of gun in my hand without having any special training, just merely because I know how the different ones feel. Here is a difference between a Glock 17 and how it looks and how it is shaped versus an electroshock taser. Now, while they both have grips and they have trigger mechanisms, that's about where the similarities end, and that's about where the ways they will feel ends. I guarantee you that this feels a lot heavier than this as well. Yeah, also just looking at the damn thing in your hand would probably help a lot. Just, like, look at the thing in your hand, please. Tasers are often produced in bright colors with neon accents to distinguish them from pistols. The Brooklyn Center Police Department manual cites the Glock 17 as a standard issue for the department. All three pistol models weigh significantly more than a typical taser. Glocks also have trigger safety and can be felt when touching the trigger. Tasers do not. Grips on tasers are typically different than those on firearms as well, though they may feel similar because they are both usually made of a similar type of polymer. So, I can tell you right now that if the battery for this is housed here, it's going to cause this to be more bulbous. It's going to cause this to feel very different. So that if you train enough, you should be able to tell. Well, you can tell after, like, literally a half second. Mr. White was shot during a traffic stop less than 10 miles from the courtroom where the trial of Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis police officer charged with murdering George Floyd last May, is being held. The police in suburban Brooklyn said that Mr. Wright was initially stopped for driving a vehicle without current registration, but then detained after they determined that a warrant for his arrest had been issued, stemming from a missed hearing on a misdemeanor gun charge. Now, I have been stopped before for not having a legal registration. What happened in my scenario was I was poor and was not able to afford insurance, but I desperately needed to get to where I was and did not realize that my license had been revoked because I was also between houses at the time, so I didn't get my letters or anything that said that my stuff had been revoked. So when I got pulled over and subsequently arrested, detained, etc., it was because of the exact same reason. At no point did that turn violent. Because it shouldn't. It shouldn't turn violent. There's no reason for it to turn violent. So let's continue on. Just stating that I have experience with this kind of stop happening to me. So a clip of Officer Potter's body camera released by the Brooklyn Center Police Department shows the police trying to handcuff Mr. Wright before he lurches suddenly back into his car. The video shows Officer Potter's arm aiming a weapon as her voice shouts, "Taser, taser, taser," on the audio. She fires one round, Mr. Wright groans in pain, and Officer Potter can then be heard to cry, "Holy shit, I just shot him." The Brooklyn Center Police Department protocol dictates that officers wear their guns on their dominant side and tasers on the opposite side of their bodies, to reduce the risk that they will confuse the two weapons. In most cases in which an officer grabs a pistol instead of a taser, the confusion occurs under particular circumstances, said Ed Obayashi, an expert in the use of police force and a California deputy sheriff with a legal practice. So it can happen when officers carry both weapons on the same side of their body, or when they holster their stun guns on the opposite side of the body in such a way that it's easier for them to reach across their bodies with a dominant hand and cross draw. In both cases, the officer can become accustomed to using the same hand to draw either weapon, a habit that can make it harder to tell one weapon from the other in a high-pressure situation when muscle memory and instinct can kick in. Body camera footage from the scene of Mr. Wright's killing does not show how Officer Potter carried her weapons, but Deputy Obayashi said it does show her fellow officer with his gun on one side of his body and his taser on the other side, holstered so that either weapon could be easily grabbed by the dominant hand. So, I understand in a high-pressure situation that your muscle memory may react faster than your brain does to how something feels. But at the same time, that does not change the fact that these will feel very different. They will look very different. And if you're shouting, taser, 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 I see how a mistake like this can be made. But I think also the fact that it was a mistake does not suddenly mean that this is an okay thing. Does not suddenly mean this is a good thing at all. I don't think anybody's arguing it's a good thing. But I think that the argument that this is an honest mistake, well, an honest mistake that kills somebody is still considered illegal. That's still considered something like manslaughter. That's still bad. Continuing on, the Brooklyn Police Department manual states that all taser devices shall be clearly and distinctly marked to differentiate them from the duty weapon of any other device. The manual also says that officers should not hold both a firearm and the taser device at the same time. It appears that several aspects of how Officer Potter handled her weapon may have violated the protocol, though, laid out in the manual, even if she had drawn her taser and not the firearm. The manual advises that the device should not be used against people whose position or activity may result in collateral injury, including people who are operating vehicles. Mr. Wright was sitting in the driver's seat when Officer Potter fired, and his car traveled several blocks after he was shot. The manual also states that reasonable effort should be made to target lower center of mass and avoid the head, neck, and chest and groin. If an officer is using a taser, Mr. Wright died of a gunshot wound to his chest, according to the Hennepin County Medical Examiner. There have been other instances of police officers intending to deploy a taser and discharging a firearm instead, though such errors are not common. And then it lists a couple of the issues or the couple of the times where this has happened. And then it concludes by saying that Dante Wright is another Oscar Grant and uncle of Mr. Grant. We've seen this before, and we know exactly how it will play out. So apparently, the officer who killed Mr. Grant has contended that he meant to pull the taser out, but has pulled the firearm instead. He is found not guilty of charges of second-degree murder and voluntary manslaughter, but was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 11 months in prison. Now, at what point do we just accept that police have had enough training and there's just a problem here? Like, I'm sorry, how many people need to get shot? How many people in the United States have to be killed by police on accident or for any number of reasons for us to go, oh wait, maybe, just maybe, there's a problem? But there's more to this than just the issues of the police officer. There's a particular individual, a lich, who has come out on an awkward side of this conversation. Pat Robinson. Now, usually when we talk about someone like Pat Robertson, we are mad at this person. We're angry at them because they've said or done something that hurts people. But
also, I'm going to say, you know, I think a lot of people are thinking like I was, that both the gun and the taser would be put on your dominant side, but it's not that way.
Yeah, but they have to cross where they have them on different.
So you actually have to reach across yourself to
you
get
feel
the
difference.
Yeah, it's definitely
there's just no comparison. As I say, they're not making tasers in this yellow color anymore. They're making in black. They're making them yellow. Now, how she made the difference was she shot that poor guy to death, saying, "This is what I thought. I thought was my taser." And if you can't tell the difference in the feel of those things, it's crazy. Anyhow, she deserves, but you know.
Yeah, he does need to get his finger out of the trigger well. He's demonstrating very, very poor gun safety. But we're going to continue the video. Also, I know the volume's a little lower in it. Sorry, guys, for that.
I am pro-police, folks. I think we need the police. We need their servants, and they do a good job. But if they don't stop this onslaught, they cannot do this. You know, the police in Virginia picked up a lieutenant in the Army and began to give him trouble. And our state police are highly trained. But why they don't stop this? And this thing is going on in Minnesota, but the Derek Chauvin, I mean, they ought to put him under the jail. He has caused so much trouble by kneeling on the death of George Floyd. It's just, I mean, on his neck. It's just terrible what's happening. And the police, why don't they open their eyes to what the public relations are? They've got to stop this stuff.
Maybe they need more training.
Of all people, coming out on as close an approximation to the right side of history, Pat Robertson popping out and going, guys, he says we need police. I would amend that to say we need law enforcement. I think the police as they currently exist have issues that need to be dealt with. But I agree that we do need a form of law enforcement. And I agree with what he's saying, honestly. I agree that we have a problem right now with the police force. And it's a giant... It's not just a public relations problem. The public relations problem is happening because of the police killing people problem. But the public relations issue gets bad and continues to get bad and get worse and worse and worse because we have more and more of these incidents happening practically every week. I am curious, how many deaths do we have by police officers this year? I'm just curious here. Law enforcement deaths in 2021. I don't want your fucking blue striped shirts. Oh, this is officer deaths. Okay. Throughout the trial over George Floyd's death, killing by police. Mount. Yeah.
Is wax paper equivalent to parchment paper?
Are you putting it in the oven?
Yeah.
Cannot do that.
No aluminum. Got it. Okay, thanks.
Hey. Okay. So keep reading with a free account. New York Times, I do not wish to do that. You should not be paywalling information. I am sorry. No. I do not want your... Guys, can I just go off on a tangent real quick? If you're gonna have a slogan like freedom dies in the dark, then maybe you shouldn't paywall the information. Just throwing that out there. So we've got a list of people who have been killed. I am looking for numbers. I suppose we could manually count through January. Ah, and this is a dynamic list that may never be able to satisfy the particular standard for completeness. And this is only showing January. So I may not be able to find those exact numbers right now. Unfortunately. But, point being, I am willing to bet that we are going to have, as is the case in almost every year except 2020 because pandemic, that we are going to have a disproportionate amount of police killings compared to other first world countries. I am almost 100% certain that that's going to be the case. Said at the top of the list that it listed 19 people, but the list is only showing January. This is not showing deaths in February, March, or April right now. I think we're going to have a disproportionate amount. Because that's generally what the case is. And the United States tends to stay in those trends, unfortunately. Narandia Al says, actually, 2020 was right on track with police killings the previous years despite the pandemic. How? That's... How? Jesus. Anyway, I think the conclusion here is maybe we should just stop. Maybe we should find a way to, like, just, I don't know, stop throwing money at the police departments? Just maybe defund them a little bit? Maybe? If this shit keeps happening, why would we keep paying them to kill us? Moreover, I don't think that the state should have the ability to enact violence on its people in the first place, but that's just me. That's just me. Anyways, I don't know. America sucks right now, and we keep getting worse in this scenario. While the Derek Chauvin trial is going on, and we should be looking at that and trying to figure out how to be better. But we won't. That is my pessimism talking right now. We can do better. I'm going to just take a look and see what police brutalities looked like in America for the last 5 or 4 years. So, 2020 and 2017 had a lot of deaths. So more white people killed, which we expect because they are the most represented in the population. A disproportionate amount of black people killed and Hispanic people killed, despite the fact that they do not represent anywhere near as much of the population. But based on this, we can see here that in 2020, more black people were killed than in any of these previous years. And in 2021, we are already en route. We are already well en route to have a lot more deaths. Hold on, let's go ahead and whip out calculator real quick. So, 2021, we have 1 plus 112 plus 20. Yes. Plus 30 plus 50. All right. So based on this, as of March 28, 2021, 213 deaths. 213 people killed by police officers. So we can multiply that by 4 to account for every month. And we should have, by the end of the year, about 852 deaths if these trends continue forward. Let's compare that to 2020. So 852 is our working number. So 2020 for black Americans, or 2020 for unknown, 126. There were 28 people killed in the other category, 169 people who were Hispanic, 241 who were black, and 457 who were white. 1,021. We are actually, compared to 2020, which had a lot more protests and probably accounted for a lot more police brutality, we're actually, looks like we're going to be about on track, but a little less. But let's see what that looks like as a mean. Let's say it looks like as a mean. So, in 2019, 202 unknown, 39 other, 158 Hispanic, 235 black, and 370 white. Doesn't work. Okay, so it's looking like per year we generally have about 1,000 deaths of people who die by the hands of police officers. Let me calculate 2018 real quick to see if it's about... Okay, so 996. Yeah, so about 1,000. If the numbers continue exactly as they are, we will have a little less this year than normal. But it's looking like about 1,000 people are killed by the police every single year in the United States. If we divide that by 365, that means that about 3 people are killed every day in America by the police. That's fucking ludicrous. That's what the numbers show you. Every single day in the US, about 3 people are killed by cops. Why? Why is that? And it's been that way for years. That's what the trend apparently has been, at least for the last 4 years. And we can look and see how bad it is going back further. But honestly, why are people okay with this? Why is this considered acceptable? I don't know.